This is not normal, Ammons' mother, Rosa Campbell, shuddered in fear. We killed them and killed them and killed them, but they just kept coming back. Was it a supernatural force? A coincidence? Or was it simply the haunting of the Ammons family? This story will make you question everything. Today, we'll delve into another bone-chilling case that took place in November of 2011, when the Ammons family moved into a quiet rental on Carolina Street in Gary, just another unremarkable home on a row of plain, one-story houses. But by December, something far from ordinary began to happen. An infestation of big black flies. They swarmed the screened-in porch, thick and unnaturally persistent, despite the winter cold that should have killed them all. As the darkness deepened, a new terror crept into their home. After midnight, Campbell and Ammons would often hear it, the slow, deliberate thud of footsteps climbing from the basement. And no, it didn't stop there. It was followed by the unmistakable groan of the door between the basement and the kitchen swinging open. But each time they checked, the space was just empty. However, one night, Campbell awoke to find a shadowy figure of a man pacing relentlessly through her living room. Heart pounding, she sprang from her bed to investigate, only to discover large, wet boot prints trailing through her home. It was proof of something that shouldn't have been there. What she didn't know, it wasn't about to leave anytime soon. On March 10, 2012, the family's unease gave way to pure terror. It was around 2 a.m., Ammons' scream shattered the silence. "Mama! Mama!" echoed through the house. Rushing to her bedroom, Campbell found her granddaughter just 12 years old and a friend frozen in shock. But something terrifying drew Campbell's attention right to the center of the room. The girl, her grandchild, wasn't lying on the bed. She was floating, levitating, unconscious, defying everything the world thought it knew. A cold dread filled the room, and Campbell, paralyzed with fear, could only watch. "What's happening? Why is this happening?" Campbell recalled, her voice trembling with the remnants of fear. But after what felt like an eternity, her granddaughter slowly descended back onto the bed. She awoke, dazed, with no memory of the horror that had just unfolded. The unsettling silence that followed was broken only by the whispered words of those who had witnessed the impossible. They wouldn't return, not a single one of them. Fear, like a heavy fog, had claimed them too. Campbell vividly remembers telling her daughter, her voice thick with desperation, "We need help. We need to talk to someone who knows how to deal with this." But even as the words left her lips, Campbell and Ammons both knew they couldn't name it. Whatever it was, they believed it wasn't of this world. It was something far darker. After hearing their story and visiting the house, a few church officials finally spoke the chilling truth. The house on Carolina Street was haunted. The spirits that lingered there were not of peace. Their solution was simple, almost ritualistic. Clean the house with bleach and ammonia to drive out the evil, and then use the oil to draw crosses on every door and window, marking them as a barrier between the living and whatever dark forces had taken hold. Following the church's advice, Ammons said that she poured olive oil onto her 3 children's hands and feet, then carefully marked crosses on their foreheads, anointing them in a desperate bid for protection. But the terror didn't end there. Seeking answers, Campbell and Ammons turned to 2 clairvoyants who delivered a chilling diagnosis. More than 200 demons had taken residence in their home. The clairvoyants' words resonated deeply with Campbell and Ammons. It wasn't just a random explanation. It aligned perfectly with their Christian faith, validating their worst fears. "The best thing you can do is move," the clairvoyants advised Ammons, their words heavy with finality. But moving just wasn't an option, not for a family struggling to make ends meet. Instead, Ammons, desperate for a solution, followed one last piece of advice. She set up an altar in the basement. Covering an end table with a white sheet, she placed a white candle and a statue of the Holy Family, Mary, Joseph, and Jesus atop it. Opening a Bible to Psalm 91, she silently prayed, hoping the words of protection would somehow shield them. To complete the ritual, Ammons and another person donned white t-shirts, wrapping white scarves around their heads. On another clairvoyant's instruction, they set fire to the sage and sulfur, letting the acrid smoke fill the house. They started upstairs, working their way down, the air thickening to the point where it became nearly impossible to breathe. As the smoke swirled around them, Ammons drew a cross in the haze, marking the space with an almost desperate reverence. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then, things got worse. Ammons and her children, ages 7, 9, and 12, became vessels for something unspeakable. Their eyes bulged, staring, unblinking. Grins, twisted, malevolent, spread across their faces. And when they spoke, their voices deepened, unnatural, hollow, like something unhuman was forcing its way out. Campbell and Ammons could only watch in horror as their children became strangers, morphed into something far beyond recognition. Campbell claimed the demons couldn't touch her. She was quote-unquote protected, born with an invincible shield that kept evil at bay. She believed she and others like her were guarded by some sort of unseen force. But for Ammons, the possession was unbearable. A constant wave of weakness hit her, leaving her lightheaded and feverish. Her body trembled violently, and every moment felt as though her very soul was slipping from her grasp. "You can feel it," she said, her voice shaking. "You can tell it's different. It's something supernatural." Meanwhile, the youngest boy, who was only 7 at the time, sat in a closet conversing with a boy that no one else could see. The unseen child described what it felt like to be killed. But the eeriness was only just beginning. One night, Campbell witnessed the unimaginable. Her 7-year-old shot from the bathroom as if it was hurled by some sort of invisible hand, crashing violently into the wall. And another night, a headboard slammed into the Ammons' daughter with such a force that it left a gash that required stitches. The 12-year-old would later describe the horror to mental health professionals. An invisible hand closing around her throat, choking her, pinning her down, keeping her from speaking and moving. A voice, cold, venomous, whispered in her ear, telling her that she'd never see her family again. What's worse, it threatened that she wouldn't live to see another 20 minutes. And it just kept coming for them. Some nights, the terror was so overwhelming, the family had no choice but to seek refuge in a hotel. In a final, desperate attempt, they turned to their family physician, Dr. Geoffrey Onyaku, on April 19, 2012. Ammons, shaking with fear, recounted the horrors they'd endured, hoping he might offer some kind of explanation or understanding. Geoffrey just described it as bizarre. 20 years and I've never seen anything like this in my life, he told the Star. I was scared of myself when I walked into the room. But even he wouldn't speak in more detail. He made it clear he couldn't, not without psychiatric clearance for the waiver of confidentiality Ammons had signed. In his medical notes, Dr. Geoffrey wrote down the chilling diagnosis: delusions of ghosts in home, hallucinations. But what Ammons and Campbell claimed came next was far darker. These events were also detailed in a DCS report. Rosa Campbell stood Bible in hand in her Indianapolis home on August 23, 2013, reciting verses in a desperate bid to combat the evil consuming her daughter and grandchildren. Then, completely without warning, the boys collapsed, falling unconscious, their bodies lifeless in their mother's arms. Campbell cradled one while Ammons clutched the other. Panic set in. Someone from the doctor's office called 911. When the police arrived, they found the scene beyond their understanding. 7 or 8 officers, multiple ambulances, all rushing to their house. The boys were taken to the Methodist Hospital in Gary, their fate uncertain. At the hospital, Ammons' plea to anoint her sons with olive oil was met with mocking laughter. The boys woke up in the hospital. The older one, calm. The youngest one screamed and thrashed violently, needing 5 men to restrain him. Meanwhile, an anonymous tip to DCS raised suspicions of child abuse, suggesting Ammons might be mentally ill and encouraging her children's strange behavior. DCS case manager Valerie Washington investigated, finding the family healthy and free of marks. A psychiatrist confirmed that Ammons was of sound mind. While Washington interviewed the family, the 7-year-old began growling, eyes rolling back, and locked his hands around his brother's throat, not releasing until the adults pried them apart. Later, in an exam room with nurse Willie Lee Walker, the boy glared at his brother, growling again. "It's time to die," he hissed in a deep, unnatural voice. "I will kill you." As the youngest spoke, the older boy headbutted Campbell in the stomach. She grabbed his hands and prayed. Then came the unexplainable, according to Washington and Nurse Walker's report. The 9-year-old, grinning unnaturally, walked backward up a wall, flipped over Campbell, and landed on his feet, never releasing her hand. "There's no way he could have done that," Walker said. When police asked if the boy had run up the wall like a stunt, Washington clarified he didn't run, he glided, backward on the floor, wall, and ceiling. Reverend Michael Maginot visited the family on April 22, 2012. For 2 hours, Ammons and Campbell detailed their nightmare. But then, Campbell stopped him, pointing out a flickering bathroom light. Every time Reverend Michael approached to investigate, it stopped. He thought to himself, "It must be scared of me." Then came the Venetian blinds, swaying wildly in the kitchen, though no breeze touched them. Reverend Michael also saw wet footprints across the living room floor. Ammons complained of a headache, and when a crucifix was pressed to her head, she convulsed violently. After 4 long hours, Reverend Michael was convinced the family was being tormented by demons, and the house was certainly haunted. He blessed the home, praying and sprinkling holy water in every single room. But before he left, he warned them to leave. It wasn't safe. They moved in with a relative, temporarily escaping the madness. But less than a week later, the women returned. This time, DCS family case manager Valerie Washington accompanied them. That was along with a police officer and 2 others out of professional curiosity. Ammons refused to enter, but Campbell just went along. Directly beneath the stairs was a dirt floor, jagged concrete surrounding it as though it had been shattered. The makeshift altar that Ammons had created still sat there, rings of salt surrounding it, a feeble attempt to ward off the demons, according to a Hammond police report. Campbell told the officers that the demons seemed to emanate from beneath the stairs, an unholy source of torment. Gary Police Captain Austin, one of the officers present, had always believed in ghosts, but dismissed the idea of demons. That belief shattered after stepping foot in the Carolina Street house. What he saw, he later admitted, changed his mind completely. Austin's skepticism began to crumble when strange events followed him home. Photos he snapped on his iPhone displayed eerie, inexplicable silhouettes. His police-issued Ford radio malfunctioned on the way back, its static cutting through the silence. At his Gary home, the garage door refused to open despite the power being on, and his personal car, a 2005 Infiniti, became possessed by something unseen. The driver's seat began moving back and forth on its own as if pushed by invisible hands. A mechanic later checked the car and claimed the seat's motor was broken, suggesting it could be a distracting malfunction, potentially even leading to an accident. Austin, once a skeptic, found himself grappling with his own beliefs, starting to give weight to Ammons' claims of paranormal activity. But despite his shift, mental health professionals weren't as convinced. Clinical psychologist Stacy Wright, who evaluated Ammons' youngest son, noted his tendency to act possessed when challenged or asked difficult questions. She said he was mostly coherent, save for when demons entered the conversation. Similarly, psychologist Joel Schwartz, who assessed Ammons' daughter and older son, reached the same conclusion. Ammons underwent several psychological evaluations herself, with experts noting that she was guarded but not displaying signs of psychosis. One even suggested that her fervent religiosity might be masking underlying delusions. Still, Ammons and her children continued to assert that they were under the control of demons. On May 10, 2012, Campbell, Ammons, Austin, and 2 other officers from the initial visit returned to the Carolina Street home. This time, they were joined by Reverend Michael, 2 Lake County officers with a police dog, and DCS family case manager Samantha Illick, who stepped in for Washington, who refused to return. The police dog showed no interest in any particular area of the house, but something else quickly caught their attention. An oil-like substance was dripping from the Venetian blinds in a bedroom, though its source remained a mystery. To ensure it wasn't something Ammons or Campbell had deliberately poured, 2 officers wiped it off with paper towels, then sealed the room for 25 minutes to prevent anyone from entering. Reverend Michael didn't hesitate to call it. The liquid, he said, was a clear sign of a paranormal or demonic presence. On the very same day, the Reverend performed a minor exorcism on Ammons, with 2 police officers and a DCS case manager, Illick, being present. Illick said that she left the ritual feeling that something unusual had happened, though she wouldn't commit to calling it demonic. The nearly 2-hour ceremony, though, gave her chills. Afterward, Reverend Michael instructed Ammons to research the demons that were tormenting her, believing that each demon had a name and a personality. Names, he said, hold power and would be key in combating these forces. Ammons and a friend scoured the internet, though their computer kept malfunctioning and Ammons felt very sick. They eventually found names that resonated with their family's experiences, including Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies, and other demons associated with tormenting children. The Reverend then got approval from Bishop Melchek for a full exorcism, which would carry the authority of the Catholic Church. This led to 3 major exorcisms performed by Reverend Michael in June of 2012 at his church, 2 in English and 1 in Latin. Reverend Michael described his voice growing louder and more forceful as the exorcism progressed, with the demon weakening in response. He gauged the strength of the demon by Ammons' violent convulsions, while 2 police officers who stayed in contact with him since the initial investigation stood by in case Ammons needed restraint. In November of 2012, Latoya Ammons regained custody of her 3 children 6 months after they had been removed. The Department of Child Services continued to monitor the family until the case was closed in February of 2013. Reflecting on her experiences, Ammons stated, "When you hear something like this, don't assume it's not real because I've lived it. I know it's real." But how exactly do you explain the incidents that went down at the Ammons family home? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this story to be compelling, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into mysterious and chilling stories from all around the world. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.